Okay, we're recording, so I'm going to make you the host again. Actually, I'm going to mute all. And I've unmuted JP. Thanks everyone for joining. Here at NGB, we're thrilled to have joined with FinTech Forge as a charter member in an alliance they've put together of small banks like us called Alloy Labs to help us stay informed about innovations and transformations that are happening in banking and FinTech, and to allow us to participate in this transformation. So JP and Trish are here from FinTech Forge and Alloy Labs, and they will be giving us some insight on the innovation process and what's happening and what services they provide as well. The format for this is typically a presenter where everybody is muted, and then a Q&A afterwards. JP, if that works for you guys, then what I would request is that when people get to the point of wanting to ask a question, that you can just unmute yourself, jump in, ask the question, and then mute yourself again. And I found that works pretty well. I have not run into a situation where it's been contentious and I've had to actually ask people to put in chat windows their questions. So if that works for you guys, I will hand it over now to JP and Trish.
Well, it sure does. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate the chance to be here and appreciate National Grand being a charter member of the Alloy Labs Alliance. We've got a lot of exciting things going on. I will go through around about 20 slides in around about 20 minutes. So I'll go fairly fast, kind of hit the high points, tell you what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then, yes, more than happy to take questions and answers. So I'm JP Nichols, and my partner Trish North is on the phone as well. You'll hear from her in a few minutes. And our other partner and founder, Jason Hendricks, is not with us today because he's on site with a member bank right now with their board and executive team. So we built the Alloy Labs Alliance to really address a number of the issues that we saw in the industry and have heard from organizations that we had been working with. I spent 20 years inside the banking industry myself, helping to grow a $6 billion bank to a $400 billion bank. And for the last 7 years, I've been really working at the intersection of traditional financial services and FinTech. And so one of the things that we heard was that it's just hard to keep up with the pace of change and the rising customer expectations. And this, not only from the FinTech companies, the proverbial two kids in a garage that have raised over $100 billion invested in FinTech in the last 5 years, but encroachment from the adjacent players and the digital arms race from inside the industry. The largest players have been really setting the pace. Secondly, organizations are struggling to balance the creativity with compliance. So they know they need to innovate, but the move fast and break things mantra of Silicon Valley doesn't work in the highly regulated environment of financial services. So not only are you feeling the pressure from the FinTech landscape, but also from within the industry and the regulated environment. Number three, that organizations need to create viable options for their future. At the same time, they're optimizing for today. I mean, Clayton Christensen really had this right in 1997 when he wrote The Innovator's Dilemma, because the dilemma is, I have real live customers today generating real live revenue and profit, and yet why would I divert any of that towards something unnew and unproven that may or may not pay off in the future? Yet if I don't, I'm not stupid. I know the stories of Kodak and Blockbuster and Nokia and so on. I know I need to create options. So how do we balance that? And we think about it in terms of, well, what are you trying to accomplish? If you're trying to just extend the line of the business that we already have today, and let's be honest, we haven't had a growth category since home equity in the 1980s. And most of our businesses are core growth, outside of some strong regional economies. We're kind of growing at low to mid single digits. And if all we want to do is extend that, And we have core tactics and strategies that actually work pretty well. But if we want to bend that line, if we want to take that 3 to 5% core growth and make it more like 8 to 10% core growth, we can't just do more of the same and hope for different results. And our core strategies and tactics are maybe not as effective. And what if we really want to transcend the line and actually hit a completely dramatic new source of growth? Then they really don't work very well at all. And we need a new set of innovation strategies and tactics to be able to get dramatically different results. And finally, what we found is that organizations are not all starting from the same place, and they're not all heading in the same direction. Innovation means something different for different organizations depending on where they are and what they're trying to achieve. And one size does not fit all. And so we actually have an innovation maturity curve. In fact, if anybody's interested, at the end, I can give you the link on our website where you can kind of measure this yourself. And what we measure is across 7 key dimensions. And what we found over and over again is that organizations wanted to get faster. They want to get better at using data to drive their iterations, and they want to be able to have more experiments. This idea of, look, we'll figure out everything completely inside the 4 walls of our conference room before we launch anything, just isn't fast enough. We need to be able to test and learn. And that's really why we built Alloy Labs Alliance. We believe that organizations need an empirical approach to value creation. What we mean by that is it's not just, when we say experiments, it's not just throw things against the wall and hope that something sticks. We believe in an empirical approach, a fundamental set of processes and tools that can help every organization become more innovative and get better results regardless of where they are today and where they're heading. All at the base is building capacity and process for innovation. On that, we build the capacity for speed and agility, what we sometimes call an internal accelerator. You know, an accelerator is where early stage companies go to become viable companies. We have nascent ideas and we turn them into viable companies. But what we need inside the enterprise is an internal acceleration process that helps these nascent ideas become viable in the enterprise. And then once we've done all that, we can create leverage. And so for many organizations, that's making strategic investments in these same kinds of processes and tools that we've been working on. So we built the Alloy Labs Alliance. We started last year. We said if we had 3 or 4 banks that would agree to work together, that would be a pretty good start. And we actually ended up with 12 founders and had to put the brakes on that. We put them through a private beta last year, opened it up, and now we have over 30 members that are really setting the pace and the agenda for what we're working on. It's member driven, so our topics and direction are really set by the members, and it's really an opportunity to be able to work together and reduce risks, lower costs, share the learnings, and shorten the time between ideas and results. So Trish, maybe I'll ask you to talk a little bit about how it works at the front end. So when you join the Alliance, and then I'll come back and talk about some of then the optional services beyond that.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. So joining the Alliance at what we like to call the education and the awareness level, as you can see on this slide, it's really gives you that basically that entry level into the organization and gives you that opportunity for peer networking and discussions. It also gives you access to our research and our surveys and our benchmarks that we provide to our members. There's also a wonderful package that we've recently created in addition to what we already had established, which was, a discount on our proprietary training that we offer, and JP will talk to that in a moment. We have quarterly member-only calls and webinars. We also have discounts on industry events such as Money 2020, BAI Beacon, Finovate, and South by Southwest. So all kinds of great stuff there. But the greatest thing as of late that I was excited to get rolled out was our relationship and our discounts and membership benefits in regards to the digital banking report. We provide a $1,995 credit, which can be applied to their 1-year subscription internally, or it can be added to and discounted from a multiple subscriber package, which is fantastic. And then we also have access to one of our partners from FinTech Labs offers an initial audit review and certification of their bank's digital user experience for free, which is up to a $10,000 value. So something we're super excited to offer and roll out to our membership, our members today. And it's something that they're actually going to be able to reap benefits from in terms of having a user experience audit of up to against 400 plus digital banking standards, giving them a really actionable scorecard. So super excited to get that out to our membership today.
Well, thanks, Trish. And, this idea of as at the alliance level actually came from our founding members. They said there were some organizations that said, and I'll talk about how we work together inside the work groups. And some said, well, that's a great idea, but, I actually just want to be a part of the club. I want to have the peer discussions. I want to be able to see the kinds of things that you're looking at and working on. And so for some of our members, they're happy just to be a part of the alliance, and then everything else they can kind of figure out as they go along. But starting in the lower left, that capacity building and process and tools and frameworks that I described at the bottom of the pyramid is really what we call our Anvil process. And I'll give you a little bit more detail on that in just a moment. And that is really an on-site 2-day program that's customized for your goals and situations. And that really helps build the capacity and make organizations kind of capable of being able to innovate. And then I think really the heart of what we do is right in the middle around the work groups and the blueprints and toolkits. So organizations that are members come together as they choose around specific work groups. And I'll give you a little bit more detail around which work groups we're working on right now and how those work. But this is where members have common opportunities or issues, and we're literally working together. And once we're all done, we document that in a very detailed blueprint and toolkit, includes a negotiated contract with a group discount. And then we actually share that revenue with the founders, the leaders of the work group, who help make that possible. And that's, I think, one of the really special things of the Alliance. And then finally, those opportunities often give us a chance to invest in these fintechs. So we kind of become essentially what I like to call outboard innovation department. Outboard meaning you're still steering the ship. You decide what's important and where you're headed and which ports you're going to stop in. But we provide that outboard power. Most of our organizations don't have a chief innovation officer or a full-time innovation team. So we're kind of that fractional innovation team. And then we can also serve as that fractional venture capital arm as well for those strategic investments. Now, on that capacity building, that's what we call Anvil. And like I said, it's a 2-day on-site custom program for organizations. And I love this quote from one of our members. The COO of a bank said, "We made more progress here in 24 hours than we typically make in 3 months." And we think that's high praise and exactly what we're shooting for. So the first day is really with the senior leadership team, and it's all about understanding where we are today and creating what we call a declaration of innovation. That's the who, what, when, where, how, and why of your innovation strategy. And then putting in place those foundational frameworks for governance and funding, risk management, decision-making, and aligning around the most important priorities, that long list of to-do items that you've been struggling with for a while. How do we break those down into something that's actionable? And which is exactly what we move into in the second day. And we work with what we call FIRE teams. Now, this is all centered around our proprietary process we call FIRE. And that stands for Fast, Iterative, Responsive Experiments. And it combines the best practices of modern agile business methods, but they're custom tailored to work in a highly regulated environment. And again, another great quote from one of our members: the FIRE approach allowed us to break big projects with big risks and big budgets into something we could quickly execute. And so we have a process that really works through that. It's an agile methodology for some of you that might be familiar with that, and able to really define and refine what problem are we solving for whom, what are some of the opportunities that we could look at, and then how do we begin moving forward on those testing and trial process. Then as we move into the work groups, just a little bit of detail on how that works. So the first part, that anvil, that's really all about you, and then you can leverage that internally, but you can also leverage it externally with other members through the work groups. So we bring together members that have similar priorities and help them define or refine one or more specific problems or opportunities. I'll tell you about some of the topics that we're working on in just a minute here. And then once we've done that, we curate and screen the FinTech marketplace for any potential solutions, and then they all have to pass pretty rigorous business, security, and risk assessments, and we do that along with our partner, Crow. So all the members receive economies of scale because they're sharing the common assessments, they're sharing the cost of all of that, and then everybody's on the same page because they're using that same consistent FHIR process. One of the things that we see a lot is that so often organizations are focused merely on the technical feasibility. Does this work? Does it map to our database? Can we connect it to our core? That's necessary, but it's insufficient. Because in the process, we also want to make sure that we're solving a problem the customers actually care about, if it's client facing, and we want to make sure that it has some business viability, meaning we can charge for that if it's a customer facing solution, or it's at the right cost if it's something that's internally. So we really balance all three of those. So those are some of the concepts out of things like design thinking that we incorporate in the FHIR process. And then once we've done that, we're able to roll that out into those blueprints and implementation kits that I mentioned earlier. And again, this springboards into potential strategic investment opportunities as well. And you can see some of the examples on the left-hand side of other banks that have spun some of these things out. In fact, most recently, Trish was at Eastern Bank, and the team that spun out Numerated as a solution out of that bank. So currently in the work group, we're focused on three different work groups, one on P2P payments, one on small business lending, and one on digital onboarding. And we kicked off the last two in an on-site session hosted by Center State Bank, one of our founding banks, and their chief strategy officer had this to say as he posted a video about it on his LinkedIn, that this part is normally 80 hours of individual work and is boiled down to 2.5 hours, highly productive for FinTech development. We've got some other topics here that other members have focused on, and we'll be bringing some others forward. We also have one of our members is really focused on financial wellness and how do we help our customers do better in managing their finance. So there's likely to be a work group coming out of that. And really any member can propose a work group, and then we help facilitate the process. Here's what the different roles look like and what that blueprint and implementation toolkit is all about. So in any work group, we've got one or more leaders who are really taking a leadership role. These are the ones that are more the makers, not the takers of the strategy. They're very active in the partner selection and screening, and they're the ones that are going to be first to implement and first to drive the proof of concept and the technical review. And in exchange for all of that, they have a lower cost and an opportunity for the revenue share on the final blueprints that we create at the end of the process. But we have other participants too. These are organizations that choose to be involved, and they can moderate their level of involvement based on the availability of their team and the level of interest and strategic alignment for them. So they're still participating in the problem, opportunity, and definition. They get the first look at the partners, security and compliance and risk due diligence, and they also have the opportunity to adopt this before we roll it out to other members. And then finally, that blueprint, again, it's a full working solution, a negotiated contract with a member discount, all of the due diligence and an implementation roadmap. And one of our members, I think, says it well. It's like buying into a 12-month project at month 9. So organizations can choose the level they want to be involved in. Some are not involved in any work groups at all yet. You can be a leader in one, a participant in another, and just purchase the blueprint that comes out of the group for another one. So it's really very flexible engagement. I want to spend just a quick moment here talking about the strategic investment process. So this is, again, kind of the corporate venture capital arm. We have opportunities that come from lots of different places, but the primary place is the work groups, because this isn't us going out and trying to find some cool companies and throw some cash at it. The difficult part of venture capital investing is really understanding what is the product market fit, what kind of problems are this solving for the customers, and what kind of traction are they getting? And that's exactly the kind of unfair advantage that we have in working in the work groups with these. And so we're able to actually pool our members' capital and run them through the same process and be able to, again, share the costs of the due diligence and all of that process and all the management to be able to create significant impact on the company's success and influence on the company's direction, and really some unique insights during the process. So again, this is all built on the FIRE process, fast, iterative, responsive experiments. And it is, as I said earlier, modern agile business methods, but custom tailored to work in our highly regulated environment. We've been working on this for years, and it's been featured in leading industry publications. It's been taught at 4 of the 6 leading graduate schools of banking, and it's really gotten rave reviews all around. And finally, here's a team you're hearing from me now, and you heard from Trish a few minutes ago, and sooner or later, I'm sure you'll hear from Jason. He was the founder of one of the world's first digital-only neobanks known as Burke Street, and actually Trish and Jason worked together there, and that's where I first met Jason when I was still at the bank, and we were really kind of comparing notes and keeping in touch over the years, and we got together to build FinTech Forge, and with the idea that one of the things we want to do is build the Alloy Labs Alliance so that organizations can work together. So that's a pretty high-level overview. There's some more detail, including a short explainer video at ftforge.com/alloy. There's more information and also application to join. So with that, a pretty quick spin at a high level, I will be happy to take any questions or comments that you have, and you can just unmute yourself. And Tim, maybe since it's your show here, I'll let you unmute yourself first and moderate. And if you'd like, you can even ask the first question if you have one.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I would like to encourage people to ask any kind of questions about what he said or your innovation programs or whatnot. I guess my first question is for you, JP. I know that we were one of the last charter members to fill up one of the last charter slots. What availability do you have to accept new banks?
So we're opening that up again here, actually next week. So we purposely, went slow to make sure that we had this right. We had a private beta with the founders. The charter members like yourself have been really instrumental in giving us great feedback around the things that we're adding the most value, some things we could maybe do a little bit differently to increase the value. And so we're members can apply now. We've had a waiting list in some areas of the country where we were a little bit maybe overweighted and in the map, but we're going to be opening that back up, and so we're happy to take applications anytime at this point.
Yeah. So yeah, let's open it up to everybody who's attending here. Definitely encourage you to ask questions. Not only is this really sort of just amazing opportunity for banks like us, but they have deep knowledge into what's going on in our industry in terms of where things are headed, what transformations are happening with cores and so on. So definitely encourage you to ask any questions that you have. No question's a bad one at this point. Anyone? While we're waiting for them to jump in, maybe JP, I know that you can't really talk about what's going on in the work groups, but Can you give them an example of what
Sure.
an interaction might look like?
Sure. That's a great question. So I'll give you an example with the P2P work group. So I think everybody's pretty familiar with the rise of Venmo. And if you don't know the whole story, it's actually a pretty interesting one that I tell a lot in the classes that I teach. I mean, a couple of kids graduated from college and in the classic entrepreneur story, said, look, the status quo isn't good enough. We think we can do better. They created their own old answer because we didn't really have a good way of doing easy peer-to-peer payments, and that's grown into a business that's now transferring $20 billion a quarter. The banking industry spent a long time thinking about, well, what's our answer to this? And finally in 2017 launched Zelle. And for the largest banks, that seems to be working okay. For consumers, it's working okay sometimes. And for many of the community and regional banks, it's really not working at all. They're in long queues to get implemented, lots of questions around the process and the cost and around all that. And so one of the things our members really started talking about is, can't we do something better than this? And so a group came together and started looking at some pretty interesting options and alternatives to what was out there already. And thanks to some of our really, really good industry connections, we were able to put a meeting together with somebody. And we don't have anything we can announce publicly just yet, but we're hoping to really soon, where we think we're going to have a really good alternative that's going to be interesting for a lot of the banks. And I'll tell you, on the digital onboarding, that's another one where I think we're going to make some pretty good progress early on, is just understanding what the issue really is. It's not just, is there a tool out there that can get an account open on my system digitally? Well, yes, there are dozens, if not more, of tools for that. But that doesn't really solve the problem for all the members. The problem goes beyond not just getting the account open on the books, but how do I actually get that to be an active funded account? That's the whole goal. I don't want to have a zombie account on my system where I'm paying for it, but I'm not getting the benefit of that customer relationship. And so part of the time that we spent together in Florida was really refining and defining what is that opportunity and what's a first phase look like. And so we already have a potential partner selected in that. Our members are really excited about. We think we'll give them a lot of new capabilities, and I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being a strategic investment opportunity for some of them too. So it's just really a good opportunity to take the opportunities and pain points and actually turn them into something tangible that we can work on together.
Great. And then just to make this a little bit more tangible for people, I know you covered this in the slides, but can you give a hypothetical example of how a bank might join a work group and then see something all the way through to having it implemented and being able to offer that as a product or service?
Yeah, what kind of more detail are you looking for, Tim?
Well, I mean, my first question when we joined was, when we're done, do I have to hire a developer? How do I get this in my core? Questions like that.
Yeah. Yep. And to some degree, you're right, there's always going to be a little bit of unique work on your end to get that final bit implemented on your end. One of the things that we knew from day one was that there was no way to be able to accommodate everybody on every different core and every different kind of situation. But one of the things that, as our members have worked on this, have kind of learned is that, but you know what, the second time we do it and the third time we do it, it gets better and easier and faster. One of the things that hasn't happened yet, but I think may be fairly likely, is work groups may end up splitting up into some streams as we get towards the end of the process. The front part is really pretty common on understanding, again, what problem are we solving for whom and what might some solutions look like. But as we get down closer to those implementation things, we could easily see that there's a COCC subgroup, there's a FISERB subgroup, and so on. around all of that. But most of the work is really being done by the partners. So this isn't about us going out and writing new code. It's finding the right partners and then finding out how to adapt that. And then on the back end, obviously there's still a little bit of work that has to be done for everybody depending on their unique situation. But net, there's still a lot of benefit from this. And I think the other thing we're hearing a lot from our members, and I'll tell you, we're hearing a lot from the FinTech partners too, is there's power in numbers. We like to say we're stronger together by working together on this. If I'm a FinTech and I hear 10 different things from 10 different banks, it's hard for me to know what to prioritize. I have limited resources and a small team, and I'm trying really hard to learn what the market wants from me, but I'm hearing different things. But if I have 10 banks that come to me as a group and say, hey, we thought long and hard about this, and this is the first thing that we need. This solves our most critical problem. And then in the second phase, we would want something that looks like this, because then that's the next most critical problem. That's very easy for me to get behind. And so it's part of what really makes the process run a little bit smoother for everybody that's involved.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it also makes a lot of sense that as the cores get used to us members, whether it's one or we're banded together and approach them in numbers, that they'll get used to working with us, and implementations, I think, would get easier, especially as numbers grow.
Right. Right, and and the cores have their own innovator's dilemma, right? It's they've got a business stream they're trying to keep going, and same kind of thing, not to be separated into 10 different sets of priorities. So the more that they can hear from others, the easier it is for them. And we always like to joke that I don't care who your core is. I love when I talk to a bank for the first time and I have no idea what their tech stack looks like. But we can usually joke, hey, we don't even have to know who it is, but we can tell you what you've already heard. Yes, we can do that. It's $100,000 plus $10,000 a month, and it's on our roadmap. We'll get to it in the next 12 to 18 months. And remarkably, that's a pretty good prediction most of the times. And being able to have a group of banks that are presenting a cogent priority is actually really even helpful for the cores.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, has anyone thought of any questions they'd like to throw out, or even any thoughts they'd like to share at this point?
How are you guys deciding what work groups to set up, what initiatives to bring people together to review? Yep.
That's all member driven. So we have a pretty active Slack community. We have a lot of we have some large group channels, and then some specialized channels that are focused on specific topics. And it's really just based on member interest of like I mentioned earlier, we've got a member now that is pretty focused on financial health and wellness, and kind of brought it up and said, hey, is anybody else interested in this? And a couple other banks have raised their hand. And so when they're ready to launch that, and we'll kind of help facilitate the process. We also do surveys of the members and try to get the pulse of what's going on. And with both our internal and secondary research that we share with them are all kind of feeding that. But at the end of the day, it's all member driven. And then one of the things I didn't say explicitly is this is kind of just embedded in my own knowledge, and I need to remember to say it explicitly. But we work exclusively for the members, for the banks. So we're not paid by FinTechs. Nobody can pay to play. Nobody's telling us, hey, we've got this cool thing. Will you promote it to your members? They try, but that's not how we work at all. And so it's really all driven by the members.
Great. Any other follow-up questions, or any questions in general with respect to innovation or cores or FinTech? I know that FinTech in general is mystifying to a lot of people. This is a great opportunity to ask your questions right here. Anyone?
I'm just wondering, how often do you guys get together with the member groups?
That's a great question, and one that comes up a lot. I should also remember to say that one proactively because almost everybody asks that. Everybody's really busy and they've got a lot of things going on, and nobody has excess travel budgets dying to do live meetings. So we don't do a lot of live meetings. We try to do about one a year. So we met originally with our founders last year in Chicago. We're planning on a member meeting in Boston somewhere around the October 8th through 10th area, because we're partnering with BAI. We're actually running their Innovation Summit this year in Boston. So we're probably going to do a member meetup then. We also poll our members a lot and try to say, well, who's going to the ABA annual conference? Who's going to Money 2020? Who's going to Finovate? And we've done a lot of kind of ad hoc meetings there. And frankly, some of those meetings at the bar after the conference have been just as good as everything else we've done. But we have a series of member educational webinars. We just did one on core systems a couple of weeks ago. We've got one coming up on user experience and design. And so we kind of do some teleconferences, and then we do a lot of asynchronous meeting on the Slack communications channel as well.
So for banks that are already maybe working with some fintechs and developing products and such, do you guys do any work to help drive maybe what the next project should be, or connect with other fintechs that could be valuable based on a bank's strategic direction?
Yeah. So based on the bank's strategic direction is actually probably the most important part. So I want to be clear, kind of what we don't do and who we're not. So we're not tech consultants. We're not integration consultants that figure out how to get everything plugged into your system. It really is all about helping translate strategy into action, both internally and then through those strategic partnerships and investments. And so if you're already working with fintechs, there's probably, if you're working with fintech X, right, one specific fintech on one specific project, there's usually not a whole lot that we're coming in and doing at that level. But kind of where I think you were going with the question is, so how do we think about how does this fit in? One of our members told us, the thing they hate the most is when their CEO goes to another conference because they come back with 10 more business cards. Hey, go talk to these different fintechs and see who's good out there. We definitely do not take an approach of, hey, here's vendor X, Y, and Z, and we're not publishing our version of Gartner's Magic Quadrant. We're actually really focused on exactly what you asked about. What's the strategy? What are we trying to accomplish? How does this fit into our other list of things that we're working on right now? We have a thing that we call our Innovation Atlas. It's a series of strategy maps that we walk leadership teams through to think about how they're allocating those projects across that. And so many times, somebody starts the conversation with, hey, we're really unhappy with vendor X. What do you think of vendor Y or vendor Z? And sometimes I guess we probably disappoint them with our answer, because the answer is usually, well, you could succeed with X, Y, or Z, and you could fail with X, Y, or Z. So we're really focused on really how do we help you accomplish the most important priorities. And the technology and the vendors are really just a tool. Yep, vendor risk management matters. And yep, security and diligence and all that matter, but that's not the end game. Those are, the milestones we hit along the way. Does that make sense, or if there's something else I didn't quite answer?
No, that made sense. That answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. What other questions do you have for JP or Trish? Well, this has been really great. Thank you so much, JP and Trish. I hope everyone really absorbs what you've said and can go back and think about this. It's really, really critical, in terms of where we are in trying to figure out what is happening, the transformations that are happening mostly digital, and what we can do about it. So we are excited to be with you, and thank you everyone for joining.
Well, thanks. We're happy to be here.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks. Thanks.